This is one of the resources I'm sharing to. So you can see, I'll just read through. Good logical programming is developed through pre-code, good pre-code planning and organization. Like I explained, you don't just start coding when you have a problem. You first analyze the problem, come up with a solution before you get into the whole coding process. Now, this is assisted by the use of pseudocode and programming flowcharts. Now, so you see the flowchart, and now for flowcharts, there are icons or diagrams basically that you can use. But I think this definition is a bit too strong worded for me. So I'll probably go to another one. So I opened up this one also. So this one says before writing the code for an application, which is what I explained, pre-planning the code is important. And we can do this with the help of flowcharts and pseudocode. It helps us in writing good and efficient software. Move on. Now that you have an idea of what pseudocode is and a flowchart is, I'm going to quickly run the application. Like I said, I built the application already, and then I'm going to quickly run it over. I'm going to run the application on my terminal, and then we'll just see how it works as an application. So I'll run my. Sorry, I was just checking my internet if it's working here. So meanwhile, I'll run my stuff here. I built all the applications here. So you can see if I do ls, I did everything here. The sorting here, I think I already finished that. So this is the first one. Yeah, so I'll start with that. So just get a feel of how the application is working, and then I will ask one or two of you guys to share your thought process based on what you've seen, and then I will show you the source code, and then I will, before I show you the source code, I'll try to break things down based off of what I've seen also, and then we'll go and look at the source code. So that's the process by which we'll follow. So I'll run the application now. And now the application is asking me, enter set of numbers separated by comma to calculate the sum of the squares. Don't worry, I will explain the problem. I will explain my thought process in solving the problem or analyzing the problem to come up with a solution. So for now, I want to enter a set of numbers separated by comma, to calculate the sum of the squares. So if I enter 1, 2, 3. Now it tells me that I entered 1, 2, 3, and the sum of the squares is equal to 14. Having said that, I hope you guys can see my screen. I will try and increase the font a bit. Yeah. So yeah, having said that, I entered the sum of this. I entered the numbers, separated by commas, and then the program is giving me back 14. So this is my input, and this is my output. This is the output from the program. So there's been a process in between. You remember the old flowchart thing, yeah? You remember the old flowchart thing? There's the start, there's the input. So the program started, it asked me for my input, I input 1, 2, 3. It processes it, and it gave me out, it processes it, and then it gave me out an output back again. So I hope you guys understand the flow of the application. So now I want someone to just tell me what you basically understand now from my explanation so far. I'd really just like or love one person to just tell me what you understand so far based on the presentation of the program itself for the sum of squares. So I entered the input, it processes it. What do you think that process was? And then now it's giving me an output. Based off of this, what can you deduce? Anyone there?
Uh, eh, okay. Well, that's one squared, two squared, and three squared. Addition of it gave 34.
34?
I mean 14 rather.
Yeah. Oh my God, I was almost starting to think that. Look, I was almost starting to think that I might that bad in math.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much.
I
Thank you
was
very
using
much.
a phone.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much, though. So yeah, let me mute. I thought I muted. Okay. So yeah, well, as you guys can see, it's pretty clear. So now with the practical presentation of the application itself, you can almost come up with the what's going on inside of this application or what might be going on. But in most cases, of course, you won't see the application being made because your client is coming up with their own problem. They're telling you their problem. There's no application for it. That's why they're coming to you. So your job as a programmer is to think through the problem. So they will tell you, probably they send you a PDF of their problems or what they are aiming to achieve, or you are having a meeting with them, yeah, and they're telling you the problems, and then you have to take notes. And it's important that you listen and pay attention to every word that comes out of your mouth. Now, I will go over and share my own thought process too. Well, now it means I would have to look at the questions. So it says develop an algorithm. Now, this is a problem. Calculate the sum of squares of given input of numbers. So that means you're taking several inputs of numbers, not just, it could be one, it could be two, it could be three, it could be 100. Now, when you get those numbers, sum of their squares, so sum of each of the numbers square. So I don't know if you guys understand what that means already. You're getting those numbers. So say for instance, yeah, your application is taking uh, input of numbers. So the number could be however long. It could be two numbers, it could be three numbers. For in the sake of simplicity, let's say there are only three numbers. So the user inputs one, inputs two, and then inputs three. Now each of this number, the question is, or the problem set is, give us a sum of the square of each of these numbers. So I hope you guys understand already the question. Calculate the sum. The sum is plus, and the squares, which is not square root here, the square, which is double basically of the numbers. Yeah. So give us a square of the numbers that are entered. So input of numbers, squares of the inputs of numbers. So number one, your application is taking in numbers, not alphabet. Yeah. But that's a bit of the of high level. If you are trying to like build an application and trying to catch exceptions, there's something in programming called exceptions, meaning that if your application is expected to get numbers and the user is entering alphabet, it should return an error. But that's still on the high level side of things, or a bit more advanced, for you guys right now. When you get into the whole programming aspect, you'll be doing exceptions, which is where that will be applicable. But for now, let's just assume that our users are sane people. They're not people who's trying to break our application. So when you ask them for numbers, they're giving you numbers. They're not actually giving you letters. So that's very important. So meanwhile, the problem set is you get an input of numbers. So you're getting either one or two numbers or three numbers or four, as many as the user input. Now, each of those numbers, you will square them and then you add them to each other. That's already my pseudocode. So my pseudocode is get the user input of numbers. So I tell the number, I tell the user, if you look at my application here, I'll run it again. I tell the user, give me your numbers, but give me in comma separated version or style. Give me in comma separated style. So the user gives me their number. So I can enter 1, 2, or 1, 1, 1, or I'll just use 1 also, 1 and 1, all in comma separated. Yeah. So this is assuming that your user is sane. The people who follow instructions. Yeah. So now the user gives me their numbers, and then I will take these numbers and I will square each of them and add them to each other. But then, if I'm writing the pseudocode, it means that I get the user. My first instruction will be get the user input, yeah, which is all of these numbers. I think my light might go off anytime. That's because it's raining already. It's good to be in Nigeria. Well, so I get the user input, which is going to be, certain amount of numbers. Yeah. And then I want to set, so I can either use this as my number one or number two. But I think for me, I'll do my number one. I want to set a value. Now, what would that value be? I want that value, which is variable. Yeah. I'll set a value. It's here in the chart that I was showing you. So here, okay, I think that's what. No, it can be the connector. Let's see. Let's see if we have something like that here. Okay, you know what? Let me use this in case this. Oh, so a rectangle. Exactly. I think that's what's missing here. There actually is a rectangle, but also the rectangle. Yeah, a rectangle. You can also use a rectangle to indicate assignment of a value to a variable, constant, or parameter. Now, what that means is I want to create uh, a container. I want a container that is holding a certain value. Now, that value could be anything. But in the case of this application, yeah, I want to set, so my first thought in my pseudocode is I want to set a value. Now, that value will be result. I want to set it as result. Yeah. I want to set it as result. And that result, the content, the result is the name of the content. And inside of this result, I want it to be 0. Now, that's my thought process. I want it to be 0. Now, the following step, the next step, I want to get the user input. So the user enters 1 5 times, yeah. And then my next pseudocode will be loop through iterate. You guys understand what iterate means? It means go one after the other. So go one after the other for these numbers. When you take this number, I want you to double it or find the square of this number, which is 1 times 1, right? Which is still the same thing as, well, not doubling. Yeah, not doubling. It's different. Yeah, doubling and square is different, actually. I just thought of it. So this will be 1 times 1 because it's 1 squared. So 1 times 1 plus 1 times 1 of this plus 1 times. But then how do I keep track of it? So I want to use 1 times 1 of this and I want to add it to the result, which is 0. So this will give me 1. When I add it to the result, which is 0, I'll still have 1. Now that result, that 1 that I get, I will now save that 1 into my result back. I'll save it back into my result. So my result has been updated to be 1. And then I come to the next one. I square it again. 1 raised to power 2, which is 1 times 1. It will give me 1 again. Now I go back to my result and I add that 1 to my result. Now at this point, you know my result is already 1. Now it'll be 1 plus 1, which is 2. And then I'll save it back into my result. And I come here, so it's like repeating the same process until by the time I get there, I expect to get 5. So if I do this, you see, I get 5. And that's because I have a result value that is holding the result of this process. The first process on the first number, it will hold that result. And then it moves on to the next process and does the same process and hold the result. And then does the next process and hold the result. And then does the next process, hold it until it gets to the last. And then I output this. So if you guys understand the math there, please let me know. Do you understand? Yes or no? So I will know if I need to repeat or not. If I need to like try and expatiate more. Do you understand? Hello guys. Do you guys understand? Do you understand the thought process? The math? Put in the chat box, please. Yeah, put in the chat box, please, that you do understand. Yes, 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 if you do. Please put in the chat box. So if you do understand, so we can move on. If you do understand, please put in the chat. Yes, 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 yes. Come on, guys. Do you understand? Okay, well, I'm not getting anything. Okay, awesome. Sorry, I'm starting to get something. Okay, okay, awesome. Awesome. So I'll go back to my application. Now I want to show you the source code. This is where it gets interesting. This is where your life as a programmer is like, this is you achieving your dreams now. I'm just kidding. But of course, this is what you want to be doing. So I'll go over to that application itself. And then you can see this application is built using Python, by the way. So I do not expect that you guys will understand what's going on here. But to an extent, I believe you should be able to at least have an idea of what's going on. So first, I set a variable, and inside of this variable, this is the input. This is what you use, the function that you use to get the user values in Python. Okay, so it'll be different. It definitely be different in other programming languages like C and all that. It'll definitely be different. So I am using this input function, and then I put the instruction there. I say, hey, enter a set of numbers separated by. Now, when the user enters their input, yeah, this is another function. Now, when they enter an input, this variable, I ran a method on it. I ran a method, and this method I ran, you see, if I click on here, you see this method, this thing means return. It's telling me that it returns a list. So it will make all of those numbers here, all these numbers. It will turn them into a list of 1, 2, or 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. But of course, there won't be a list like this. Like it will be in strings list. So this I will definitely give me, and that's because this is how Python. When you input, when you do an input, when the user inputs, value into your application, the application is getting it as strings. But that's a data type which might be strange to you guys right now. But anyways, when the user enters all those values, what it does is I call this method on the variable here, and then at the end of the day, I have something like this, like I explained. So I have something like this here. This is what I'll eventually get from here. And then, so if I print that, I think which I did here, you can see I actually printed it there, even I didn't see that. Now I set that variable, you see, but you can skip all this because by the time you're programming, you already know what to do. Yeah, which is, so my pseudocode, like I said, first, like I said in my pseudocode, first I put this, which is my first line in the pseudocode. And then this one, I have set this variable to 0. And then I get all that list, yeah, which is here. Now the next thing is, now I am iterating through that list. So I am representing each of those lists, each of the items in this list. This is now the new list. I am representing each of these items as this. So num will start for this for now. Now what this now does is, it's a string, but I need to convert to an integer. So let's just assume it's 1 as 1. So now I now do this result. This is still the same thing as doing result equal to result plus and then the what's it called, the squared of this one. This is how you do squared in programming, at least in Python. At least I'm not sure of other languages, but in Python this is how you do squared, double asterisk and 2. So what happens here for num? So for each of these, this number will represent the first one first, and it does this. Now the result, which is now coming as another container, yeah, and then I'm saying the current result, which is 0, add it to this num here, which is standing for this one. For first, it's standing for this one. So 1 squared will give us 1. So it adds that 1 to this 0 here, yeah, and that gives us 1, and it stores it into this result. Do you guys get it? And then this process is ended. So it goes back again to this part because it's an iteration. So it would do that. It would loop through until the end of the list. So it comes here now. Now this num will now stand for this. So you get, it finishes this, it starts all over and then comes to this, and then it will do the same and come to this. So now it comes here. Our result is already 1. It's still 1 here, yeah. Result is still another container, but here it is 1. You remember, we have already added the first one to this result, and then we have called it, we have added it, and then we have 1. Yeah. Now is result after. So results after process. Yeah. So I think someone's trying to join. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So result after process. And then I want to print the results before the process. Results before process. And then I'll do just to put a break in between them. So I'll do that process all over again. I'll run the application again all over. So I do this and I enter 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So you can see now, the result before the process was 0. Now when it comes to here, the num, this iteration here, this num acts as this the first time. And then it comes here, 1 squared gives us 1. And it adds it to the current result, which is 0. You can see the result here is 0. Now when it adds it, it puts that value back into result. And then results becomes 1. After that process, the results become 1. Now before it goes to the next one, result is still 1, right? Now you see, result before is still 1. And then it substitutes this value, it puts it inside of this container again. And then it comes down here, and then 1 raised power 2 is still 1. At this point, result before this process, yeah, before this process, result before this process here, it says is 1. Yeah, so it now adds 1 plus 1, which is 2, and then it puts it back here. You can see after now is now 2. Yeah, so then it goes back again, put this third one inside here, which is 1, and then by the time it gets here, result before process is 2, yeah, is 2 again, and then now you do this third one now, 1 raised power 2 is 1, plus 2, and then that gives us 3, and then it stores inside result, and then we do result after process is now 3. Yeah, so do you guys understand that concept? Please put in the text in the chat box. Do you understand the concept? Do you understand? Please put in the chat box. Yes, 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 if you do. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Awesome, that's good. So basically, that is, the solution for this problem in terms of, like writing it in code. But then also looking at the solution, or even before looking at the solution, I have already explained the pseudo process. So that means you understand how to solve this thing. So I will show you my pseudocode and I'll show you my flowchart. So the pseudocode for the sum of squares of given integers. So first I set a variable with value to 0. So this is my variable sum, and I'm setting the value to 0. Now I get user input of comma separated numbers and convert them to a list, yeah, which is this list. Yeah, so you can see I'm literally, before building this application, I already have my pseudocode and I'm literally just following. So first step is I set my sum, a result, I set a variable to 0, and then I get user data, using comma separated, and then the user enters it here, which is the second step, and then I convert them to a list. So in Python, this is how I convert to a list. So I put this convert to a list because I know that when I'm now writing the code, it means that I have to convert those inputs into a list. This will now be when I'm writing. So you remember pseudocode is an informal way. So it does not mean that you now state what you will do inside of the programming, when you're programming it itself, when you're coding it. No, you don't have to do that because it has to be informal. It has to be readable and understandable, right? So I get all the users and I convert it to a list. But now when I'm coding, I know that I have to run a function in the programming language to get the user, and then I have to use another function provided or method provided by the programming language that will convert that input into a list. That will convert that input into a list. And so basically, that is what I've done. So that's more like my third step, but here it's like the second step. But of course, you can see there's a conjunction and there. So now I want to loop through each number in the list. Like I explained, I'm going through each of the number. So while I'm going through each of the number, so I go through each of the number and add the square of that number to the sum variable, yeah, which was what I explained to you here. So before this process, now here is the loop, here is the iteration. First, I say for num in num list. So for this number, so let me just change this to number so you guys can understand better. Yeah, okay. Okay, number. So this one I'll still call it nums list, right? Yeah. So for this number now is now representing each of this. So let's say this one now takes care of this first. I take the first number. Someone's calling me. I hope you won't disrupt the line. So for this number, I am representing it. I'm representing this first one as this number. Now, before I do any process, I know that my result before any process is 0. Yeah? My result before any process is 0. But in this case, in my pseudocode, I use the word sum. Yeah? In my pseudocode, I use the word sum. But that's up to you. You can use whatever variable name that you wish to use. So I'm using sum in my pseudocode, but I'm using results here. I can equally call it sum. But I won't use sum because sum is not what you should use. I think sum exists in as a keyword in Python. So it's kind of like It's a taboo to use sum. It can break your program. I think this sum though is what exists. Oh, even this sum exists. This sum exists in Python too. Yeah, but anyways, I'm not using sum for a reason because it can break my code, especially in Python. Sum is a reserved keyword in Python that hey, don't use sum. So when you're coding in Python, you should know that already. But I am using result because I know that I shouldn't use sum. So anyways, that's my variable. Now this number, which is starting here, before this process, the variable, this result is 0. Now, it does this process. This is the process now. It takes that number, which is here, this container now. It squares it, which is raised power 2, which is 1 times 1. And then it adds it to the current value of the container result. And then that value is now stored back into this container result. And then result after that process will now be 1. So it takes another number here now. It goes and takes another number, and then that's being stored inside this container now. And then it comes down here. At this point, before the process, result is 1, which we know from the previous one. Now, result is 1, and then we're doing this number now that's now containing this, which is number squared. And so it does that 1 plus 1, which is now 2. So result after this second process, result is 2. So result before the third process will be 2. So 2 will now be added to the next squared number. So I believe that is all explained. And so you can see my pseudocode. It's literally following along. Repeat for all numbers in the list. So I gave an example, an instance. The sum will now be the sum, current sum, plus each number all squared. And then I'll repeat this process, and then I'll display the sum. So now that's my pseudocode. Let me check if you guys have any question in the chat. Okay, no question. So I'll move on. So that's my pseudocode. Now I want to represent this on my flowchart, and then I go here and I do my flowchart. Now look at my flowchart. I do the start. Yeah. Now in my start, yeah. So I do the start. Yeah, I start the program. Once I start the program, I set my variables. Yeah. I set my variables, which is represented by a rectangle diagram, as stated here. So I set my variable. I set my variable as sum equal to 0. Yeah. Now, when I do that, I still go over. This one will be explained later. Now I go over and then I get the user input. Remember, this is called a trapezium, I believe, if I haven't forgotten math. So that's called a trapezium. Oh, parallelogram, whatever. I still think whatever. You know what it is. It's a parallelogram, yeah. So where there is input. So I get the user value, get user input of comma separated numbers and save in the list. So I get that input here. Yeah, you guys understand? I get that input here, and then I come down here because I said save in the list. So basically my flowchart is quite elaborate too. I go down here, and then you see I do this process, which is each number in list, square them, the square of each number in the list. Now look at what happened. I go back all the way. Actually, I don't know. I'm really bad at drawing stuff, so I couldn't find. I don't know how to do this in Google Word documents. I think it should have been done here, but I don't know how to use this thing. So you guys bear with me. So this is supposed to be like a chart that goes back up here, back and forth anyways. So it's like it does the square and then it goes back all the way here. Yeah, you guys can see. And now the sum variable is now set to the current number of the sum plus the square of each number that is coming up from here. And then it saves that here. So the sum is updated. Now when it does it for all the process, it displays the total, like the sum now, the value of the sum after this process is done. Remember, this is a process, so it will complete all the process, and then always go back here until there are no more processes to do. Then it comes down here, displays the sum, and the program ends. Do you guys understand pseudocode and flowchart now? Okay, OG Demelin, please, shoot. OG, what's your question?
I did okay.
Huh?
Okay. Yeah, just in the chat. I think Bill wanted to say something.
Who wants to say something?
Yeah. Bello Adetoke.
Okay, Bello. Okay, you already put it in the chat.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm just joining. I'm lost and I don't understand." Okay. Well, I will. I think just follow along. I'll eventually. I think I'll repeat some of the things I've just gone over because we just covered like the first question. So I'll probably repeat what I've just gone over, and then maybe at the end of the session, I'll do a bit of a recap. So if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
does anyone else have any question pertaining to what we've done so far? Please leave. Or do you understand? I guess that's what. Do you understand? So if you understand, please put yes. Let's bombard the chat section with yes, yes, yes. If you understand. So do you guys understand? Do you
Oh, no,
understand?
no, if you don't.
Yeah, or no if you don't. Right. So do you understand, please?
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Let me know if you do understand what I just went through or the explanations. Come on, guys. You understand? Let me see your comment. Okay, Oluwamuyiwa, yes, yes, yes. Okay, Regina, baby. Who else is there? Shafia, I believe. Shafia is there, yeah. Shafia. Yeah, Shafia is there. Umar. You guys awesome, awesome. I see that. Okay, nice to hear from you, Shafia. So you see, it's really easy. It's really like not the art part. Basically, it's coming up with a solution to the problem. The art part is coming up with a solution to the problem, as you can see from what I've done. So now, basically, we've concluded the first question, yeah, which is this. So concluded the first section, the first question, which is this. Now I'll move on to the second part. Now the second part is it's a bit of a question, because now this is the thing. For here, they're telling us reads in three numbers, yeah? So they're very specific that it is three numbers. But being an experienced programmer, yeah, I like to write my stuff to be really scalable. So my thought process is, what if the number is beyond three? Because what is applicable to just three numbers might not be applicable to five numbers or 10 numbers. So I try to think scalability. That means if it's applicable to three numbers, I want it to be applicable to any amount of numbers too. So that's why I said this is sort of like a it's kind of like a bit, you know, very tempting or weird one per se, because yeah, they're giving us specific, but also I do not know the mind of the. So if I were attending to a client that gave me this problem, I think my question to the client would be, are we going to be dealing with only three numbers, or the user can add more than three numbers? So in that way, I know how to channel my thinking process or to come up with my solution. So I would know if I'm restricting the user input to accepting, or my program to accepting only three numbers from the user, or I am building my application in such a way that the user can enter any amount of numbers. So I hope you guys understand that. So I want to skip this one now, which we'll come back to. We'll come back to also. We'll fix that. This is another one I find a bit easier from here. It's a bit easier, yeah. But it's a step over it's a step up from this one. So I want to attend to the last one here. So it says calculate a running sum. Now, a user will enter numbers that will be added to the sum, yeah. And when a negative number is encountered, it will stop adding numbers and write out the final result. So I want to display the application. I will run the application, and then we'll see. And I'd like to hear one or two thought processes of how this might be able to work. You know, your pseudocode. So Python running sum. So now it says enter numbers separated by comma. You would like to add to a running sum. So I want to say first I want to add numbers without a negative value. Yeah. So I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So that'll give me 15, which is 1 plus 2, 3, 6, 10, and 15. So that's correct. But what if I do 1, 2, oh, sorry. So I run the program again, and I do 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, no. I think I'll put -1 here. 4, 5. So at this point, yeah, what am I doing? So at this point, yeah, it would start from here. It will add this two, three. It will add this to this. That's six, and then it sees this negative one, and according to the problem, it will keep adding some, and when a negative number is encountered, it will stop adding and print out. So, but at this point, it means that this program has to return six. So if I enter, it is indeed giving me six, and you can see I was writing out the numbers. So it does 1, 2, 3, 6, and when it gets to -1, it stopped and it printed out this output. So inputs. Remember, every problem or every application, every program that you write, yeah, that's basically what a software is. A software is an application or a program that accepts user inputs, it processes it, and then gives back an output. So this is actually a software that I just wrote. It takes in user inputs, processes the data that has been received, and then it returns or prints out an output. So, having said that, sorry, yeah. So having said that, you see, so it takes out 1, 2, 3. When the moment it encountered -1, it literally just prints the running sum of 1, 2, 3 minus -1, 4, and 5 is equal to 6. So it stopped adding from this part. The moment it noticed or encountered the -1. So I would like to hear your thought process or how you guys would would go about this pseudocode for this program or for this challenge, this problem. So if there's anyone there who has already thought about it, please, I'd like to hear it. And like I said, I won't be sharing my pseudocode and my flowchart for this particular application, but I will explain, how to go about the flowchart. Now, the pseudocode, I will explain my thought process in case you guys or nobody gets it right. I will explain my thought process and how to come up with the pseudocode, and then I'll share the code also so that you can look at the code and from there generate your own thought process or generate your own pseudocode and flowchart. So please, anyone out there, let me know. I will open up the application again so you can see, uh, you know, the application that's been run, and maybe you want to come up with something from there. So is anyone saying anything?
Yes, I want to make a contribution.
Hold on,
So
please. Sorry to cut you. Hold on. Joseph, do you have any question? I see that you're lost. Which part of it are you lost? Have you been following from the beginning, though? I have to ask. Have you been following from the beginning? Oluwatobi Adesonya, I don't recall you following from the beginning. But yeah, you're free to say your thing. Go ahead, Oluwatobi.
I just came before no long, bro. I'm lost totally, but I
Okay,
heard you said you are going to play quick recap at the end of the course, so I'm just
yeah,
checking
I'll do a recap. But
Yeah.
have you been following from the beginning of the session?
No, I joined the call halfway, not too long, maybe 10 minutes ago.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you get it along the way.
Yeah, I'm just watching.
Oh,
It's
okay,
like imagine right now.
okay, awesome. You get it. You get it shortly.
All
Meanwhile,
right, thanks.
yeah. Who else has a question? Joseph Faith. Joseph Faith, what's up? Which part of it do you not understand? Please let us know. You want to either type in the comment section or just unmute your mic and let us know. Please be fast with it. Joseph Faith. Okay. Well, just in case you understand what, or I mean, you can hear me and you are able to put your questions together. Please put it in the chat box and then we'll deal with it. But so far, I'd like to believe that everyone else is understanding what's going on. So I want to confirm. If you know that you're still understanding, you're following through and you're understanding, please say yes. For those who do not understand, please say no so we can maybe just quickly tackle. I mean, except it would have to be those who have been following from the beginning. Yeah, for the rest of you who joined halfway, just hang in there. We will do a recap. Yeah, so for those who have been here from the beginning and you're not understanding, please say no. And if you've been following from the beginning and you're understanding, please say yes. Come on, guys, let's put that in the chat box, please. Come on, guys. Let's see. What do you have? Yes, yes or no? Yes or no, guys? Are you guys understanding? Okay, I see Kyle Deola. Yes. Who else? Who else is telling me yes? Are you understanding so far? That has been following from the beginning. If you have been following from the beginning, okay, I see Olumu. You had awesome, awesome, awesome. Sophia, 80%. Okay, that's good. That's good. I hope by the end of the session you would have gotten to 100%. But if not, we will take questions also. So yeah, 80% is good. It's a good place to start. Um, well, I like to think that majority, at least for those who have been following from the beginning, you kind of like understand. And we're already 1 hour into the into the whole session. I hope that it won't take it too long, so I'll be able to, you know, the video file won't be too long or too big rather to upload. But anyways, I'll just go over. I will continue to the next question. So the next question is this. So I'm doing the third one instead of the second one because I feel like this just a little bit over this, like in terms of challenge. And then this one is the father of their challenges. And that's because of my thought process to this anyways. It shouldn't have been actually. But regardless, I think it's still big. So we'll do this, calculating the running sum. Now a user will enter numbers, yeah? So that means we're still getting 1, 2, 3, or X amount of numbers, yeah, that will be added to the sum. From this, I can quickly deduce that on my pseudocode, I am first setting a variable. So when I start my program, I set a variable. So I'll probably call that variable result, just like I did in the first one. So I set it to 0. And then I get the user input, yeah, which will be any amount of numbers, comma separated. So is someone trying to join in? No? Okay, okay. Olumuyiwa, all right, please, Olumuyiwa. Yeah?
Yes, I want to ask, like, I want to, is this more like a clarification? It seems, well, maybe because of the ones I've noticed so far, it seems all these algorithm questions, most of it that it seems someone has to start with, let's say, like initializing a variable. It's either 0, -1, because
Well,
maybe
it's not a pattern. It's not a pattern per se, but you can also say it depends on the problem set. Yeah, from the problem set that I see here, it says a user will enter numbers. So it's more like you want to have a container that is keeping. I think your sound is sound like your sound is sort of like disruptive. So I'll just mute you. Sorry. So I'll go over again. So the idea of setting or initializing, which is kind of like the techie term to use, but for layman term, the style of at least setting a variable, setting a value into a variable in the first place, yeah, is to be able to keep track. You want to keep track of the changes that occur during the processes. Do you understand? Because eventually, this program, there's a process which is the sum process. So for every sum, you want to keep track of that change in your application, which is why you want to at least set a variable. That variable, I am setting the result. It could be anything. You can set it to anything. I mean, you can name it anything, but of course, you want it to start at 0 because whatever you add to 0 gives you back that number, right? So you don't want to use any other number. If you use -1, then your program will give you a different result. You do understand, right? 0, whatever number is added to it, gives you back that number. So that's why I'm setting it to 0 in the first place because we're dealing with numbers here. Yeah. Imagine that I'm getting, say for instance, I'm writing an application that is checking, that wants to validate if your password is 8 characters long. So that means I'll be checking against a variable that will set the number to 8. So and then I'm checking if your password is less than 8. Yeah, less than 8. If it's less than 8, then I tell you your password is invalid. Now, and let's say now in that application, I also want to check if your password is greater than 8 and it has a combination of letters and alphabet. Now you see it has letter and alphabet. That means I am checking if your application contains letters or alphabet. So I can either but this will be a very costly one for you. I mean, it might be really there are shorter ways to do it in Python, yeah. But let's say that I'm not using any of these, you know, functions or methods that Python provides, and I want to write it purely programmatically. So I want to check if your password contains alphabets. So that means I'm setting a variable that contains alphabet A to Z, and then I'm checking if you use any of the item in that alphabet. So you see now I'm already using one. I'm using two already. I'm already using two variables. One is to set the number that I want to check with. If your password is less than that number, which is 8. So I'm setting minimum value 8. So now I check the password I input. When I capture your password I input, and then I check, is your password greater or is it less than 8? If it's less than 8, let me just quickly see if I can quickly just code that up. So I'll just say password validator, sorry. So you can see the thought process here. So pass validator. So first I want to set minimum value, so 8, yeah. And then I can say get user password. So I can say user password equals to input, sorry, enter password to check, yeah. And then I say if user password is less than the minimum value, yeah. You see, I already set that variable there. Now in my pseudocode, I know that I will have this minimum value, but we're just taking the problem one after the other. And then if it's less than, I want to say print. What was I going to do? Print your password. Your password is invalid. Yeah. So I want to print your password is invalid if it's less than, and then I want to say else you have a strong password. So now if I go here, oh sorry, user password. I have to use a function here, length. Sorry, what am I doing? So the length, yeah. So if I go here and I run this application, and it says enter a password to check. So if I say I say mango12. Now if you look at this, this is 7 characters long. Yeah. So if I press enter, it tells me my password is invalid, which is it is running this line. And that's because it checks the length of the password, which is 7. Is 7 less than 8? Yes, it is. So when I'm writing my pseudocode, I want to set this value for the minimum value, which is 8. You see, I'm not using 0, and I'm not using results. So I'm using something a bit more expressive. Minimum value 8, and I'm starting from 8 because the problem itself is saying that look, the application should be able to check passwords that are less than 8. If it's not 8 or more than 8, then it is invalid. So 8 is the best minimum. So I don't know if that clears your answer. So it depends on the problem. Your problem that you're trying to solve will determine the variables that you set while doing your pseudocode, while writing your algorithms. Do you guys understand? Please say yes if you do, so we can move on. That's just to clear Oluwamuyiwa's question. So Oluwamuyiwa, do you understand? And does the rest of you understand? Okay, awesome. So we'll move on from that. And then we'll go back to the question of, so here basically just to say here, and I can now set alphabets, alphabets equals, sorry, not best, alphabets equals, and then I can say A to Z, A, B, C, D, like that, to Z, all the way to Z. And then I can check if the user has used any of the, any of these alphabets in his password. And if he has, then that password is valid. And then if I want to check if it's alphanumeric, if it's used an alphabet and numbers, so I can maybe say, well, the numbers will be from 1 to all the way to, or I can say 0 all the way to 9. Yeah. So obviously, if he uses a password that's called mango12, first the thing will check 1 and 2. It won't just check 12 like that. So the moment it sees 1 and it sees that 1 is in the list of numbers, is in the list of numbers, yeah, and then you just validate. And it also sees that it has alphabet also, or the password has it has content that is included in A, B, C, D, so it has content in this and in this, then it validates it. Oh, before it validates, it checks, is it greater than 8 or not? If it's greater, then it validates. If not, it will tell you that it's a wrong password, so you have to do it again. So I hope that's all cleared up. Anyway, so I'll just clear this up. Yeah, and then yeah, so that'll be my thought process on this, basically. So I'll move on to the next question, as I'm saying. So that'll be this. So now, remember, I set a variable again, and this is it. A user will enter a set of numbers. So let's say 1, 2, 3. I'll come in. I'll run the application again. User will enter a set of numbers separated by comma. Now, for those who didn't get in the first place, this is your opportunity to at least try and get it now. So the user enters input 1, 2, 3. Now, those numbers will be added. So that means I will iterate through the numbers. I'll add those numbers in a list. When you say a list, if you're writing a list like you want to go to the market, you write maybe number 1, tomato, number 2, salt, number 3. Now, when you go to the market and you're going through your list, that's basically it. You're iterating, going through your list. So you go through all of them one by one. You check, have I bought tomatoes? If you're bought it, you mark it. So I'll just write it here so you guys can see. So you say number 1, tomatoes. Number 2, salt. Number 3, Maggi. Number 4, let's say onions. So now when you go to the market and then you want to check, have you bought this? You check, yeah. And then once that is done, you're going through your list. That is the same thing we're doing. You go through your list. Is salt bought? Yes. Maggi bought? Not yet. No, or not yet. Onions bought? Yes. And then you go go for Maggi. Now, if you get all of this, if all of this is, so this is how you know if your market experience or why you went to market are you accomplished, So if your accomplishment, if you define your accomplishment as, if everything was gotten at the market, yeah, then it is accomplished, yeah. Accomplished meaning if everything was gotten. If not, it is unaccomplished. So if I have a list that is containing all this, and all of it is not yes, all of this is not yes, it means that this part will now be unaccomplished, yeah. But if everything is yes, then it will be accomplished. So if I were to write a program for this, I'll say, okay, if I were to write a program for this, I'll say, give me a list. Give me a list. So this will be the user input of everything you wish to buy. Well, I wouldn't say give me a list anyways, because I'll be the one to convert it to a list. So give me, a list basically of everything you wish to buy. So everything you wish to buy, give me a list of everything you wish to buy. I can say in a comma separated style, yeah. And then so the user will enter something like this to me: tomatoes, onions, and then everything. So I check if tomatoes, now there's the condition now. If tomatoes is checked yes, onions is checked yes, and then I can print out accomplished. If it's no, then I'll print out unaccomplished. I hope you guys got the logic already. So, and then I'll go back to this question again. So I'll go back to this question again. A user will enter a set of numbers. So let's say 1, 2, 3. Now, when you go through that list, have you checked 1? Now we're checking 1. So 1 will be added to the result that we set initially, which was 0. Yeah. Like remember, I told you that result that we set is to keep track of the changes inside of your application. It's to keep track of all the changes that occurs when the data is being processed. Now, when the data, which is the first in the list, is being processed, yeah, the first on the list in this case, we use the 1. If 1 is added to the default value that we initialized or we stated, If 1 is added to that, which is 0, it will have 1. Now that 1, we are saving it back into that result. So you can see now that result is like a tracker. It is keeping track. There has been changes. The new process that just happened is 1. I want to keep that 1 for future changes. Now I come here again. This one has been marked checked. Yes, I have done that. Now it comes to this part of the list. 2. Now what do I do with 2? In my application I said, where is that running sum? Yeah. No, I'm not supposed to show you guys that. Yeah. So in my application, now I'm now saying this 2 now. What do I want to do with it? Add it again to the result. So the value that the result is holding. The result is already holding 1. So it adds this 2 to that result. And then that will be 3. Now it takes that 3 and it stores it into that variable because there have been changes. Now the result is now 3, waiting if there are other changes. Of course there are other changes because there's still one more item that the list has to process, the loop rather has to process. Now it goes to the third item, and then it adds this 3 to the current value in results. And that makes it 3 plus 3. That's 6, yeah? And then it saves it back into that result. And then it comes back again. Is there anything else to do? Do we have any item on the list that's not been checked? No. At that point, it is accomplished. Like I gave you the illustration, it is accomplished. And then the next step is to print out the result, the output. So I hope that is clear. So now you guys will be able to do, like I said, well, anyways, I will show you the code, and then I will share the code, and you guys will have to do, you'll come up with your own pseudocode in your own terms and the flowchart. Now, so the application goes like this. You see, the running sum is 0, which is going to be our tracker. The user enters the data. It stores, well, it converts it to a list according to our pseudocode. But of course, when I'm writing it programmatically, then I have to convert it to a list. Yeah. So you can see I'm giving it even a name. The container, I'm giving it a name that's kind of like explanatory. You know, it's very explanatory. User numbers list. When I got the data from the user, I called it user numbers. When I converted it to a list, but this is all when I'm writing the application. It has to be clear. So now I create the list here. That's why you can see that it says you entered 1, 2, 3. Yeah, which is, so I am only showing this one that user entered. If I said you entered user nums list, it will show me in form of a list. So if I do this and I say 1, 2, 3, it shows me in form of a list. You can see that. But that's not all. Now, while I am going through each of the number, for this particular question now, it says that if that number, now we have done this first part of it, yeah, will be added. Now it now says if that number is negative, if the number that is encountered or that it's now looping through, that's the current number. If that number is negative, we want to stop all the process. So now if I look at my code, I check it, ignore all this. This is on the programmatic side. This is just to make sure that the data, because when the user enters the data, it comes in as a string, not as a number. So I have to make sure that I am checking that the data is a number, because you can't compare if your name is less than 0. It does not tally, because your name is alphabet, yeah, and 0 is a number, so there's no way to check that. It makes no sense. Except if you're checking that the length of your name, which the length of your name will give you a number. So let's say your name is Yinka. Yinka is 5-letter word. So you're now checking if it's 5 less than 0, you know. So you can only compare data types that are of the same value, of the same, data type that are of the same value, that contain the same data value, you know. So I am making sure that the user entered numbers. Of course, they entered sort of like strings, which is like, you know, text, which they are not numbers basically. So I'm converting them to numbers. So I can say just ignore this. This is on the programmatic side of things. But now here's the interesting part. This is still the number, but just know this one is not this one. It's not the same right now in terms of the spelling, and that's because I have to like do some changes to make sure that I'm comparing numbers. That's why the name is different here. But yeah, so let's just assume it is, yeah. Now I am now comparing these numbers. So which is when users enter 1, 2, 3. I take this first one, yeah, and then I check first before doing any addition. Now that's very important, because the problem set says that you are adding. First, of course, it says you're adding, and then when it when it encounters a negative number. Yeah. So I check first. Is this because if the number, now imagine if the number is at the beginning of the list, then it should just return 0. There's nothing to add. But if I don't do the check first and I go ahead and add that number before now checking, then I would have a problem. So imagine doing this. Look at this now. If this one was not checked first and I bring it down here, look at what will happen. I'll do it both ways and then you see. So let me clear this. Sorry, I couldn't see that again. So let me clear this and rerun. And say, let's start with -1 and then 2, 3, 9. Yeah. You see, it returned -1, but it's not supposed to do any addition. But if I return this back to where it was, it checks the number first. Now, the idea of a negative number, how do I know that I have a negative number in my list? It's because any number that is less than 0 has obviously gotten into the negative side of things. But that's programmatically, obviously, you have to think through it programmatically when you're coding, coding the stuff out. So that's how I know that any number that is less than 0, it's already negative. Then just break the process and then give me back the running sum. So if I save this now and I run it, now that I'm now checking the numbers, I'll use the same thing. Now that I'm now checking the numbers before doing the addition, I should have 0. So this is the essence of setting an initial value first, because the initial value will be 0 and we have not added anything. So if the negative number is starting in the first place, you have to think through all the problem set, all the issues that you might encounter. And even the problem even states it, that in your addition though, if you encounter a number that is negative, please stop adding and write out. So you have to think, what if the negative number is at the beginning of the list? You remember I gave you the list of tomatoes, onion. And now, what if they put tomato there? If tomato is in the list, don't even buy anything. That's what it means. Or when you encounter tomato, I'll go over the list again. Tomatoes, onions, Maggi, and 4 salt. Now, I'm telling you, when you go to the market and you see tomatoes in the list, don't even buy anything. Yeah? Or when you're check marking everything, buy everything accordingly from the first list and up to the end. But wherever you see tomatoes, forget buying the rest of the things below that tomatoes. So now if tomatoes were top of my list, it means that I won't buy anything. But if tomatoes was down here, it means I would have bought onions, I would have bought Maggi. So imagine I go to a shop and I bought onions, and then I bought Maggi, and then I see tomatoes, like, okay, guys said I shouldn't buy anything from tomatoes downwards, so I'll just stop. So do you guys understand what I'm trying to say? So let me know if you do understand this concept, and I'll share the, okay, so this is the code again. What's happening? Okay, I try to save. Okay, so this is the running process. So it checks first. You must make sure according to the problem, because now this is the part where I said if your solution is not right, then you'll be having issues. You can have your application run, but the output might not be what you're expecting. And your application, computers are generally, they're dumb, they're not smart. They usually follow your instructions. So if you have the wrong instruction in your code, your application will give you the wrong answers. It will come out wrongly. Yeah, it will give you the wrong output. So you have to check first, according to the instruction, when it detects a negative number, stop adding. Just give me the running sum. And at this point, because I set the running sum to 0, which basically means nothing still, it will give me 0. If the negative number is at the start of the list. Yeah? But if it is not, it will start adding all the positive numbers until it finds negative. Now, if there's no negative number, it will add everything. It will add everything and then give me. If there's no negative number, 1, 2, 3. So now, at this point, I believe that you guys have an idea of what the pseudocode for this would be and how the flowchart